Welcome back to Street Writers.
It's 10 minutes of writing motivation, inspiration, and activation. This is part 2 of our conversation with Evan Skolnick. Now it's time for They Beat Us to the Punch.
This is admiring the craft or being jealous of it. So who's got you jealous? Who do you love?
This is going to be an odd one, I think. You may enjoy it when we get there. So I'll preface this by saying, that my style of writing and the kind of writing I've honed over the years goes along with my personality, which is to be kind of succinct and direct, or try to be.
That's one way of describing it. Sure, go with that. Your personality, succinct and direct. Yes, okay, I can validate that.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Of course, you may feel differently after trying to edit this down to 10 minutes, but so my background, is in journalism and comic books and games, all of which have a lot of brevity and clarity in their writing. You don't have a lot of space to communicate what you're trying to communicate. And this is why I've never finished writing a novel, never finished writing a screenplay. I want to, but my novels end up being 10 pages long because I'm done. I told you what you need to know and we're done. So I ended up working at Telltale Games for almost a year, walk into the Telltale kitchen, and they have actual dishwashers in these kitchens scattered around the office. Now, I'm pretty sure you know that every house that has a dishwasher has one person in that house who knows how to load the dishwasher and a bunch of people who don't give a shit.
Yes, I live in one of those houses. Yes.
And which group are you in, Dan?
I apparently do not know how to load a dishwasher.
Okay, but there's always someone who does, right? Mm-hmm. In my home, as you probably would be able to guess from my personality, Dan, I am the person who knows how to load a dishwasher. And everyone else is the person who doesn't give a shit. I look at the dishwasher when someone else has loaded it. It looks like the Joker has loaded it, like a crazy person has thrown stuff in here. So I'm looking at this Telltale dishwasher, and there's a sign on the dishwasher, and it simply says, "Please load items so they receive but do not block spray." And I almost cried. It was so beautiful. That is the most clear, direct, succinct way to explain how to load a dishwasher that I'd ever seen. It was the phrase I have been looking for my whole life. You never know where you're going to see a piece of great writing. And at Telltale, it wasn't The Walking Dead. It wasn't Batman. It wasn't Guardians of the Galaxy. There was great writing in all those pieces too.
I think there's two lessons to be learned from that. One, log on to an on-demand T-shirt place right now and start creating those T-shirts for the holidays. That phrase will mint money between now and whenever. And that is probably the reason why Telltale ultimately went under, because somebody didn't follow those directions.
I wouldn't doubt it.
That reminds me of the great Ed Koch when he was trying to get traffic under control. And they had no parking, no standing, all this and that. And I don't know if you guys remember this sign. It's still out there. He was the guy, and if you knew Ed Koch, you could just see him saying it. Don't even think of parking. That was the new line. That was his.
Yeah.
And every time I read that sign, I saw Ed Koch's face, Mayor Ed Koch, going, "Don't even think of parking here." And I said, that was perfect for me.
I mean, in all seriousness, this is one of the things that I find with my students and with just beginning writers is one of the hardest things for them to seem to do is to write clearly. A lot of them seem to think that the more words I put in, the more flowery I make this, the better writing it is. Mm-hmm. And so breaking that misconception that writers are those who use $100 words and flowery phrases and extended long sentences, and there is a place for that, but really the talent in writing ends up being communicating, and someone who can communicate clearly with as few simple words that everyone can understand, that takes more work. It's I think it was Blaise Pascal, right, who wrote this long letter to someone, and then at the end he wrote, "Sorry, this letter is so long, I didn't have time to make it shorter."
What writing is knocking you out? Tell us about it at anchor.fm/streetwriters/message.
It's a lot of slashes.
Time to hit us with your best shot.
It's time to get in the ring with us, or in the ring with Evan. Evan, what are you up to these days? What's new? What's hot? What are you excited about?
I worked on a game the last 2 years called Concrete Genie with a studio called Pixel Opus, which is an internal small studio within Sony Interactive Entertainment here in San Mateo. it was just a wonderful experience working with this team. It's a small team, like 20, 25 people, mostly young, recent college graduates being mentored and managed by some very experienced folks, some of the folks I worked with at LucasArts. It's a really different kind of game. It's a game in which you are primarily this bullied teenager named Ash, but he's an artist, and he has this sketchbook, and he sketches these beautiful landscapes and creatures in his sketchbook, and the bullies come along and basically take his sketchbook and rip it up and scatter the pages to the winds of this town called Denska and shove him on a tram and send him to this lighthouse where it's supposed to be haunted. And through a course of events, he finds that the lighthouse is kind of magical, and he meets this magical creature named Luna, and she turns his little brush into a giant magic paintbrush. And through the game, you go back and start decorating Denska with these landscapes on these kind of faded brick walls with these beautiful living landscapes, these kind of neon infused animated images, and it's so easy to make them beautiful. So it's really a game about creating artwork and beauty. Then the bullies come back and they begin chasing you through town, and you have to kind of avoid them while continuing to beautify. It has a message about bullying, it has a message about art and beauty, and in the end, it has the story became one about redemption and forgiveness as well. A lot of aspects of it were very common to writing for games, and things that are very different about writing for games that those who do it quickly learn.
Go into some examples around what you mean by that, because if we're not familiar with what would be a common aspect of writing for a game like that.
First, one of the biggest differences between writing for games and other traditional storytelling media is that the genesis doesn't generally start with a writer. I came onto the project with them already having decided many things about the mechanics. Everything I just described to you was already baked in before the team had worked on all those things without the benefit of a writer at that point. And I'm not saying that people can't come up with stories. They can, and people do. And so they, when you're working in games, you often come in kind of onto the moving train. It's already left the station, and you're going to be jumping on board it, and you'll be helping lay tracks in front of it. And also, could you paint this car while it's moving? We cannot stop the train. The first half of the story they had as the bullies are harassing you and bothering you, and then it comes to a head about halfway, 2/3 of the way through, and they basically turn your genies dark, like they turn them into like demons that are running around town, and the demons, these monsters, basically kidnap all the bullies, and you got to go rescue them. And I was like, there's a major speed bump right there, because the player is not going to want to rescue them,
right?
And so in games, there's a term for that. It's called ludonarrative dissonance, and it basically means that the story, Ludo gameplay, narrative story, they aren't going to get along. In other words, we're going to be asking the player to do something that narratively they do not want to do. And so that was my first. We have to figure out how to get around this, because this is baked in. They're not going to change that aspect. So how do I narratively smooth out? How do I get the player from really not liking these bullies at all to wanting and being incentivized to help them? And the other question I had was, how will the players share Ash's desire to make this town beautiful again when they didn't live in it when it was beautiful before? So I immediately identified these two challenges, narrative challenges. And so a lot of what I did, obviously I wrote tons of dialogue and worked on many other things, but those were the two biggest concerns I had. And I considered those my biggest job, was to address those baked in concerns. That's the job of a narrative designer or a game writer, is we have to make sure the player feels like I am, in this case, Ash. Yeah. I love creating art. I feel like I can create art. I'm looking at these walls and it's beautiful art, so therefore I am an artist. And I don't like being bullied. No one likes being bullied. So there's universal feelings that we try to tap into based on the situations we put you in. We don't force you to, again, we don't want to make you have Ash do something that you don't feel is right for yourself to do.
So in this case, you enjoyed this project because, like you say, you're supporting where the structure is going. In this case, you really like this structure. Like you enjoyed what you walked into.
I loved the concept, and I had worked with the leadership of that team before, and there was a trusted relationship there, working relationship there. And then the younger folks on the team were just a pleasure to work with, and it's nice to work on a game that has a message, that has something to say.
Mm-hmm.
It's up for a Games Award for most impact or impactful game.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Awesome.
That's currently in the voting stages now, but so that would be cool if it won that.
Yeah,
It would be.
that's great. Congrats,
It's an honor
man. That's
just to be
great.
nominated.
Exactly.
But it's a bigger honor to win. So
Well, of course.
with that,
Yeah,
Evan, thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
that was a lot of fun.
Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and connect with us at streetwriters.podcast@gmail.com.
Tell your friends to listen and their friends too. Take it to the streets.
And fight to write.